After spending nearly a year and a half in Cusco, I prepared myself for an extensive journey to explore through the Sacred Valley. The first site was Tipon, just outside of Cusco, and I had no problems boarding the Colectivo with the cuckoo. He wasn't allowed into the archaeological zone, so I tied a cuckoo up outside, but he escaped and followed me in with 2 other stray dogs he'd befriended. Like many important Incan sites, Tipon was inhabited by human groups and cultures that were predecessors to the Incas, such as the Ayamakas and the Waris. The scale and accuracy of the 13 expansive terraces was very impressive, as were the water canals and fountains, which still ran precisely after over 700 years. After Tipon, I returned to Cusco to recruit my insane Canadian housemate and good friend Jeremiah for the next leg of the adventure, Pisac. We found an empty and cheap hotel right near the town center, and we had a few drinks on the roof before walking around the town looking for a party. We didn't find any social life, so we went home to keep drinking, and I remember vomiting a lot, trying to keep up with Jeremiah. The next day, we hiked up the hill and spent most of the day exploring the ruins, wandering across the terraces and finding a nice lookout, before eventually hiking down to the river and following it back to town.
You just had the rocks. But it's strange, like, even here, the top half seems to be mud.
I mean, it looks cool. But it's like, this ain't cool.
Your mothers, oh, they did the best they could. And bleed for your brothers, 'cause Lord knows that they would.
Next morning, we caught a bus to the next town, Calca. We were excited to visit a bizarre museum with strange skulls, so hopped into a motor taxi. Unfortunately, it was still closed because of quarantine, so we had a beer and joined in the car park. We were a little disappointed when suddenly a random man pulled up to share some beers and have a chat. Eventually, we started our long trek back to Calca, a little tipsy. And we found cacti with tuna fruits, prickly pears, and stupidly we ate them without removing the skin first. Jeremiah got it a lot worse than I did, and we spent the next few days pulling prickles from our lips, tongue, and gums. We finally arrived back to Calca, where we met Jeremiah's girlfriend, Mecca, in the beautiful main plaza, and caught the next bus to Urubamba.
Where are we, Jeremiah?
Maybe up and across to avoid this, or do more walk through?
Urubamba is the largest town in the Sacred Valley and was one of the main agricultural centers of the Inca Empire. We left the town center walking to an outer suburb, surrounded by nature, to stay with a friend of Mecca's, Chiwi. The following morning, Jeremiah, Mecca and myself set off to find the salt mines. Unfortunately, the road was still closed for the quarantine, so we wandered down to the river. We met a local family with some very curious and friendly children, so we spent the day relaxing on the riverbank and swimming. It was this day that I discovered just how much a cuckoo hates water and is terrified of swimming. For our third day in Urubamba, we set off on a lesser-known hike to find the Inca site, Napa Iglesia.
El cóndor de los Andes despertó del sol, hijo es del Dios sin ti. Volando por sobre los Andes.
It is known as a portal, and you could feel the energy in the air at the site. It wasn't overly large in scale, although the craftsmanship of the portal and the thrones is incomparable to anything I have ever seen. I am still genuinely amazed by this place. The next Inca city along the Sacred Valley is Ollantaytambo. This is one of the most impressive constructions and the only site I had previously visited. From the moment we arrived, we made our way to the ruins and spent the better half of the day slowly exploring the massive area. That afternoon, Mecca caught a colectivo back to Cusco, while Jeremiah and myself checked into the hostel and had a few drinks.
El cóndor de los Andes despertó del sol, hijo es.
The following day, we explored the town and found a nice place by the river to smoke a joint.
Volando por sobre los Andes va como un guardián del pueblo inca, del pueblo.
Later that evening, Jeremiah also took a colectivo back to Cusco. And I went to a bar for a drink and met another Australian. We got along really well, and she convinced me to meet her in Agua Calientes the following night and to visit Machu Picchu with her. Early the next morning, a cuckoo and I were beside the highway, trying to hitchhike a lift. We were eventually picked up and driven for about 4 hours to the spot small town of Santa Teresa. There, we clambered out of the car and into a taxi to Santa Maria.
I am not liking this.
The taxi driver led me to believe that hydroelectric train station was just around the corner, and this somehow turned into nearly a 3-hour hike
Oh,
before reaching the railway
it's a bit
station.
hot, a bit humid. Hey there.
From there, it was only a further 3 hours to reach the small town of Agua Calientes. It was a long day.
These are engineers.
Despite the heat, it was an extremely scenic and beautiful hike along the railway tracks, and it was particularly flat.
Good boy.
I even stopped and found a beautiful place to smoke a joint before I was attacked by millions of mosquitoes.
Fue tu inocencia, la cruel fantasía que nos separó.
Good boy.
Donde quiera que vayas, te recuerdo. Vivirás en nuestro amor. En ti, la 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 la, la 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 la, mi amor. Te marchaste lejos sin saber siquiera qué cosas tiene el silencio del amor.
That night, we checked into Wild Rover Hostel, and I had an early but social night. Bright and early the next day, Karina and I organized our bus tickets up to the Inca Citadel, Machu Picchu. While the bus was nearing the entrance, we spotted a wild spectacled bear in the trees. Something extremely rare and unexpected. It had only just reopened since the pandemic, and very few people were permitted to enter at any one time. This allowed us to roam around the site at our own pace and across fences and into areas not usually allowed. It truly was a unique visit of this sacred monument, and this opportunity is one of the most incredible and grateful memories I have from all of my travels.
True.
Because everyone's just gonna hold up to them.
Oh, it always seems
The next day, some friends from the hostel took us to a local waterfall, where we swam and relaxed. And after another day's reprieve in Agua Calientes, Akuku, Karina and myself were back on the train tracks, hiking back to Hydroelectrica. That day on our return trip, we got as far as Urubamba, where we found a hotel for the night. On the final day of our adventure, we decided to venture out to Marais and Morass, so we found a friendly taxi driver to take us to both of the sites. Marais was concentric circular terraces that created their own microclimates for different agricultural purposes. And the natural salt mines of Morass were very impressive, stretched along the nearby mountainside. Then it was back to the station to find a bus back to Cusco for my final goodbyes.